a full-size jet black apparition that basically walked across the hallway underneath the lights and, went into one of the other cell blocks. Because I remember it's like, holy shit, look at that. And I turned and I just saw it, go into the courtyard. We walked through the whole thing. There's no other exit. And there's just no fucking, because two guys, we thoroughly searched that courtyard looking for whatever the fuck it was, and we didn't see shit. Hello everybody, Terrence Popp here with another episode of Live from the Lair. Alright, before I get started, let's see, we finally moved over to some cryptocurrency. We're going to be putting up a donate page. We'll have all of the different wallets and bullshit that Bitcoin and other kinds of cryptocurrencies use. So, trying to get with the modern times. So if you guys check that out, it should be in the low bar coming up. Anyway, this is some more ghost stories. They're not in any particular order, and these are all of the strange, creepy events that took place at Abu Ghraib prison and basically our tour in Iraq. All right, the next one, I left off with was, I think there was 3 of them, and I might have a few more here. This might even spill over to 3 episodes. We'll see. But the next one, I remember we had been in country about 2.5 months. The shower facility to the front of our barracks, we're staying in one of the cell blocks on Abu Ghraib, had been hit with 3 60mm mortars and pretty much destroyed. It was the pipes were burst. It shattered 2 of the water tanks and put a hole in the 3rd, and blew up the toilets. It was all fucked up. All right, and I remember I was standing right at the end of the hallway, because when you look down the cell block, there's one main hallway that goes down, and then there's 2 or 3 gates that were open. And at the end, there's a big iron door, and behind that door were the civilian contractors, because they lived in that building as well. They didn't really mix with us too much. They stuck to their own thing, because those guys were allowed to drink and do all kinds of crazy shit, and we weren't. But that's a whole other story. It was in the evening, I'd say 6:30, 7 o'clock. It wasn't too late. There was still a little bit of light outside, and the lights were on in the hallway. I mean, it was fully illuminated. Now, I was talking to this first lieutenant who was in the 202 MI battalion, and he was Jewish, and he did some time in the Israeli Defense Force. So he was telling me about his, what it was like to be in the Israeli army, and all the crazy shit they did, and the different combat units, and the tier levels that they had. It was kind of weird, but I like to hear about that kind of stuff, because I was a professional soldier, and it's nice to know what other people are doing, because they might have a good idea, and just because it's not my country nor my religion doesn't mean it's not wise. So I always like to keep my ear to the ground and see if I could pick up any new ideas or concepts. I was facing this way. The lieutenant was facing towards me, but he was kind of angled so he could look down the hallway. And I didn't really see this directly. I saw it just out of the corner of my eye, and just a fraction of a second of it. When I turned, I could just see it disappear. But to my left, a full-size jet black apparition that basically walked across the hallway underneath the lights, and went into one of the other cell blocks or courtyards off to the far side. Because I remember it's like, holy shit, look at that. And I turned and I just saw it, go into the courtyard. So he and we run down there like lickety split. It took maybe 7 seconds. It was probably 60 meters away. We sprint down there, and it was the old shower, complex that they used, and it still worked, and people did use it from time to time, and they were using it at that time, but there was nobody in it, because the other shower got blown up and there was nobody in it yet. And we walked through the whole thing. There's no other exit, and there's just no fucking, because two guys, we thoroughly searched that courtyard looking for whatever the fuck it was, and we didn't see shit. That one really creeped me the fuck out, because it was a solid black form walking underneath a light, and two of us saw it at the same time, so we're just like one person, and the lieutenant saw it straight up. Yeah, that fucking freaked me the fuck out. And since they blew up the shower, I had to take a shower in that place. That always creeped me the fuck out. That one day I would be taking a shower and scrubbing the shampoo out of my eyes, open my eyes, and this fucking thing would be standing right there. And holy fucking shit, that really fucking creeped me out, man. And there was a lot of shadow incidents that took place there. All right, here's another one. All right. So I told you guys about the orb that we saw off the wall at Lair, which was right outside Victory, which was Baghdad International Airport, and it was roughly 8.5 miles away from Abu Ghraib prison. All right, now there were three different mass graves were uncovered in the field directly next to the cell block area that my unit stayed in, and there was other units there as well. It's fairly large, and it had its own wall around it, so you couldn't really see directly into the field. But when I was sergeant of the guard, there was a tower inside our cell block that I set up a hammock in, and from that tower I could see all of the towers I was responsible for. And then I had radio communication with them. And, I would always do a combo check every 60 to 90 minutes. And if they needed anything, I'd run out there with the relief guard, or I'd bring them their chow, water, ammo, stuff like that. And it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And it was fucking dark as fuck, right? And we had just done a radio check. I get into my hammock, and I'm like gonna just zone out a little bit, because when I was sergeant of the guard, there's really no fucking sleep. You sleep when you can, because we had this insane fucking guard shift. It was like 4 hours on and 6 hours off. It was fucking punishing. And that really sucked. But all of a sudden, I hear one of my towers calling me. And I get on the fucking the comms, and he says, hey, Sergeant Popp, I need you to look down into the field, about 150 meters to the front of my tower, in the middle of the field, inside the main wall. I'm like, okay, I look, and I don't really see anything. And then he's like, put on your nods. So I put on my fucking nods. Boom. And it wasn't an orb, but it was like a mist that it was lit, illuminated to a certain degree. Not enough you could see it with the naked eye, but you could see it with the fucking nods. And it was moving. I watched it. Both of us, the tower, and we were watching it for like 20 fucking minutes. And by the time 5 or 6 minutes had gone by, individuals in other towers had seen it as well. And it was freaking everyone out. So, I basically grab my weapon, my LB helmet, get all fucking suited up, jump in my Humvee, which is parked at the base of the tower, and I roll my fucking ass out there. I actually stopped in the Humvee about 150, 200 meters out, and I was about 215 meters from the corner tower. And I was literally looking at the fucking mist with my nods, and it was still fucking moving around. And and I was kind of hesitant at the time. I was like, holy fuck. Do I go fuck with this, or do I just fucking you know, basically puss out and fucking just ignore it. Of course, I'm not going to do that. So I roll down there, I stop the vehicle, and, you know, it's now moving away from me, and I have the nods on, and I'm walking into the field to see what the fuck this thing was. And when I got about 50 meters away from it, it disappeared. I couldn't see it anymore. And that's the only fucking time we actually saw that. It never happened again. But, you know, there's no fucking way that was a fucking insect, or it just couldn't. I have no explanation for what it was, and you couldn't really see it with the naked eye. You can only see it through the nods. And let me tell you, man, that's fucking creepy as fuck. Like, there could be shit walking around you that you can't even fucking see. You don't even know it's fucking there, but it still exists. That's fucking creepy, man. That one really fucked me up. You know, like, I hated that fucking prison. That place was just dripped of evil. The whole time I was there, the hair on the back of my fucking neck stood up. You know, when I returned to the States, within 7 months, my hair went gray. You know, that's how much that fucking tour took out of me, man. All right, now, inside the prison, they converted the cells into rooms, and I remember I was given, I was a room, and I had a bunk beds in there, and I had another soldier in there from the 425 who was in the naughty boy list. He was living with me. We used to play video games and hang out, you know, good guy. And this was during the time when I was, you know, running the fucking PX. I did that for like 3 or 4 weeks. I started the PX inside Abu Ghraib prison. You know, go figure, I get fucking mobilized, shut down my business, leave my wife and child, my pregnant wife and child, to go to Iraq to basically run retail in a combat zone. So, fucking yay. But hey, that's what they do. You know, if you're on the bad boy list, they fucking give you shitty jobs, and, you know, it is what it is. So, you know, I realized I was on the fucking shit list. I just took the job. But anyway, the cell door on my fucking room, you know, we put up plywood so you couldn't see through the bars or anything. And we usually leave it open during the day. On several occasions, that door would just fucking slam shut. Just boom! And I'd jump up immediately, open the door, walk out and see who fucking did it, because I was pissed as fuck. Nobody. Not a fucking nobody. And then there was a couple times, you know, the slamming of the door happened like at least half a dozen times throughout the several months I was there. And a couple of times there was knocking on the fucking door. We'd get up and look out. There's nobody fucking there. You know, and that was fucking creepy as fuck. And a couple times you know, you'd hear somebody walking by the fucking the door outside on the tier, but you can't see their shadows of their feet under the door as they're supposedly passing, because you can hear them, you know. And when normal people walk by, you can see the shadows of their feet under the door, because they always had the light on in the building. You know, the only way you can get it dark is you shut the door, turn off the light in your cell, and it's dark as fucking, you know, it's darker than fuck. So that fucking creeped me out. And the guy that, you know, lived in the room with me fucking didn't like it either, but there's really not much you can fucking do, because, you know, you're living in a haunted fucking prison where, you know, 500,000 people died over a decade. So, okay. This next one was very fucking creepy, because it happened very close to where we saw the fucking mist. And this happened when I was, you know, I had finished my time with the PX, and I got moved to the NCOIC, which is the sergeant and the non-commissioned officer in charge of all of the security for the entire fucking compound. So now, instead of being sergeant of the guard where I ran 6 towers, I was the guy who ran the whole fucking show. You know, I had to manage all the fucking towers. erect all the defenses, put up the range cards, you know, tangle-foot barbed wire, mounds of dirt to keep fucking car bombs away from the walls. You know, I did all that shit. And then whenever there was an attack or a possible attack, I was always on the ground to make sure, you know, I was right there when the shit went down, and I would be able to see exactly, you know, what was going on, and I could adjust from there. So when we get mortar attacks, I would always run out to the tower that was closest to see if we could see spotters or anything like that. But on this particular night, they had moved my unit out of the towers, and they had moved another unit into the towers. And we'd received like 2 or 3 mortar attacks during the day, and we had a bunch of intel reports that we were going to receive in a direct assault to one of the walls that night. So it's about 11 o'clock at night, you know. And the weird thing about Hajj is they usually start their shenanigans about 11 o'clock and they go to about 3 in the morning and then they stop. That's like their tempo. So I would take a shower after 3 in the morning, but that's another issue. But, you know, apparently we had received a radio from one of the towers that they were seeing movement with the nods. So I jump in my vehicle and I'm rolling down there, right? And I remember I stop about halfway there, and because when the Humvee's running and you're in the vehicle, you can't fucking talk to people and shit like that. So I literally stopped the vehicle, turned it off, got on the radio because I was trying to get what they were fucking trying to say, and one of the cell tower, or one of the complex towers, which is inside the main wall, but it's about 120 meters away from the main wall. There's a couple towers there. One of them fires a flare into the air, a parachute flare. And if you guys don't know what that is, it goes up about 200 to 300 feet. It deploys with the big parachute, and then there's a platter. I don't know, it's not white phosphorus, but I think it's some kind of thermite, because it's literally as bright as the noonday sun. All right, so I'm standing outside the Humvee. You know, I'm holding on to this fucking radio. The flare goes off. Right, I see the shadow of my vehicle because it's off in this direction. I can see my shadow, and then 20 some odd meters in front of my vehicle, there's a shadow of a man, but there's no fucking man that's standing there. That really fucked me up. But we're in the middle of a fucking, you know, thingamabob. So I mean, I registered it, but it didn't really sink in. You know, I got off the radio, started the Humvee, drove to the tower, and we awaited for this possible attack, which didn't happen. I think they were planning on attacking, but, you know, we fired up a flare, and I guess they decided they weren't going to fucking play because they got it mowed down. Because that's what we do. But yeah, I mean, I just couldn't. And then, you know, after an hour or so when it calmed down, you know, thinking about what just fucking transpired, you know, really freaked me out. Because whatever was standing there was throwing a shadow, but was completely invisible. You couldn't fucking see it. You know, and it didn't move or anything, but you could tell it was a dude. And it was there for maybe 6 seconds. Because when I got in my vehicle and drove off, it was gone. But yeah, that was fucking pretty trippy. You know, and I had forgotten about that, and I don't know why. Maybe it's a TBI thing, but all right, well, let's see, where are we at? We're at 18 minutes. All right, well, we'll go over some others. These are just minor things. At the 414 Civil Affairs Battalion in Southfield, Michigan, I was there for about 5 years as the training NCO for Bravo and Charlie Company. And there were many nights where I was there till 8, 9 o'clock at night, sometimes later. And I was the only one in the fucking building. And I can remember walking around the building doing what I was doing. And you would hear desks in the classroom move, and then you would hear like voices, but you can't understand what they were saying, but you could tell they were human beings, and it sounded like they were at a great distance, but you can hear them, murmuring or talking. So that fucking place was pretty haunted. But it was a different kind of, it wasn't like a creepy haunting. It was more like there were soldiers there that were hanging out that just liked being there. And I didn't really fear them at all because they were just other soldiers. They weren't really going to fuck with me. I was a soldier too, so that's the way it goes. And I just ignored it. Now I remember I took my 2 daughters in there on a Saturday, and they just went crazy because they instantly knew that it was creeped out in there. They were very young at the time, and they were hanging onto my jacket, and didn't want to go anywhere. But I had to check my email and answer and do a report. It took like an hour and a half, and it really freaked them out. And then I had a very similar thing at the 403rd in New York. I walked around that place a lot at night, and you can tell when everyone's gone because out of my window I could look in the parking lot and I can tell, when the vehicles were vacated. All that was left was the GSA government vehicles that were supposed to be there, and you would get a lot of the same thing, except I didn't hear any desks move around or anything like that, but every now and again, you hear footsteps, voices, maybe you'd hear a door slam somewhere, and whenever I heard that, I'd always go check it out, and there was nobody in the building. I always thought that was pretty weird. But from what I've heard, I've talked to a lot of other soldiers, and it's actually fairly common that military installations, barracks, aircraft carriers, ships, and are just haunted. And it, maybe on some people died in some of the areas, but in the reserve unit, like nobody died there. Maybe on deployment they got whacked. It did happen from time to time, but it wasn't somewhere. It wasn't like a hospital where people were like laying down dead. I seriously think those people that are hanging out there liked being in the military. They liked hanging out there, and I personally don't have a problem with it as long as they're not throwing shit at me or touching me or fucking being a dick. And have at it. I don't care. But anyway, that's my fucking ghost stories. Hopefully, there might be a few more. I don't know. If I remember them. But anyway, gentlemen, that's my time. Take it easy.